So, as Sachin mentioned, my name is Alkarim Nasser. I founded a company, a local Toronto-based agency called B-Notions. And at B-Notions, we really focus on building mobile, social, and API type technologies. Let me just grab the slide. So today I'm talking about cracking the code for social success. And if I was to tell you that this is sort of a guaranteed, silver bullet approach, I'd probably have a lot more friends. What we're really trying to do is create a criteria or a framework to help us when we're deciding on sort of what features to add, what kind of products to build for Facebook. So essentially, we developed some criteria, we made a game, and from this process, we've open sourced and released a social application decision framework. So B-Notions is a technology development company, so we're mostly engineers. There's about 50 of us. And one thing that's sort of bred inside of our DNA is sort of our love for games. But we don't get an opportunity to build a lot of games because it really depends on sort of what our clients are doing and based on sort of their business objectives. But we love games, and a lot of our engineers are ex-EA or ex-game developers. So we decided that we want to sort of build our own game. And it wasn't until this happened where it's like, okay, let's start putting a shovel in the ground. So this happened, only a few months ago. OMG Pop got picked up by Zynga for $210 million. And what was surprising is, obviously that's a lot of money, but what was really surprising is what led up to that acquisition. So a few days before that happened, there was a headline on TechCrunch that said, Draw Something dominates Facebook. It's the most active, most played, most popular game or application ever made on Facebook. A few headlines before that, a few days earlier, it said that Draw Something was #1 in the iTunes store for free and paid apps. So this company that's actually been around since 2006, within 1 month, pretty much dominates the whole iTunes market and dominates Facebook, which obviously led to Zynga kind of sweeping in and picking up the company. So huge opportunity in Facebook and mobile to build great game companies. So we decided, what's a social game or what's a casual game? And a casual game, by definition, is something that's, casual, something that you can play without a lot of work, that you can pick up in line or on the toilet if you need to, or if you want to, and really kind of have these short and sweet interactions with a fun, compelling application. And we decided, social games naturally are meant to be simple. And a great, simple social game tends to be the most effective, and we saw that with Draw Something. So we decided, if the burden on sort of the technology is so low, let's spend a few weekends, a few evenings building our own game. But if we rushed into it, not being a social application game company, because we're not Zynga and we're not OMG Pop, if we rushed into it, it might end up blowing up in our face. So what did we do? We decided to start thinking about what creates a great social game. And we obviously looked at some of the best social games that have ever been created to date. And through researching Draw Something or Words with Friends, we're able to distill or abstract a lot of similarities. And we felt like if we understand these similarities really well and what makes a great social game, then our chances of making a great game are going to be even better. So we went through sort of thousands of ideas over several pitchers of beer over a week. And we've come up with sort of all these different ideas, but we weren't sure how to validate them. And one of the ideas was Mastermind. Mastermind is a game that came out in the 1970s. Just a quick survey of hands. Is anyone familiar with Mastermind? Okay, there's a lot of people here. So, Mastermind, for people that don't know sort of the gist of it, essentially there's a code maker and a code breaker. The code maker pretty much puts together a pattern of colors for the code breaker to guess. So as soon as that pattern is set, it's locked in, and the code breaker doesn't get to see it. But what they do get is an archive or a library of different colors, different colored marbles, and they have to go row by row trying to guess what that original pattern is. So every guess represents a line on the screen. But what was really cool about Mastermind is every time you guessed, you got instant feedback on whether it was the right color, right place, wrong color completely. So through the deduction, you're actually getting closer and closer to finding out what that code is. So inherently very social, and to Sachin's point, social existed way before Facebook sort of came about. This is a very social game, and it has a lot of the qualities of a great social application. And I'll show you why. So we came up with this list, and this list has 10 criteria in it. The first criteria is 1 and 1. So what does that mean? It means you have to identify when you're coming up with a social application or a game, because the reality is when we built this list, we realized you don't even have to use this criteria if you want to build a game. It actually works for any great social application. And while I go through this list, I'll try to bring in examples of what other great social applications have leveraged that aren't games. So one-on-one. So one-on-one can be one versus one, or it can be one with one. So, the big difference between Words with Friends and Draw Something. Draw Something, you're actually playing with the other person. It's in your best interest to have the most sort of comprehensive, creative drawing so that they can guess it right away. With Words with Friends, on the other hand, it's one versus one. So whether it's one versus one or one with one, the idea here is to determine or really understand who those two people are and how you're facilitating a more meaningful relationship between those two people. Asynchronous. So asynchronous, as far as the game's concerned, is like turn by turn. So it's my turn, it's your turn, it's my turn, it's your turn. As far as the social application goes, the idea of asynchronous and what you really want to be asking yourself here are what are those lightweight interactions that I'm going to pass back and forth between me and that other one person in my network. And to just take a step back, Spotify does have a great sort of understanding of this one-on-one because Facebook as a medium, it's not Twitter. You're not broadcasting one-to-many. It's actually a series of one-on-one relationships so that when I post that song on Spotify, Alkarim likes, so-and-so track from Radiohead, or Alkarim's listening to so-and-so track from Radiohead, it's actually a conversation I'm starting with a number of my friends, and some friends are going to come on and say, oh, wow, Radiohead, they're actually performing tonight at Downsview Park. Or they're going to say, yeah, Radiohead's new album comes out in a few weeks. And those are one-on-one conversations, and you might notice when you respond to those comments, you often start with that one person's name. So it's very much facilitating a more meaningful interaction between those two people. So asynchronous is really just breaking down those actions, understanding what those actions are, making sure that they're very easy, and you can just flip sort of one action to the other person can respond, and the conversation can continue. But some actions are really unique, and those unique actions should be really thought out before coming up with a great social application. So if what you're suggesting is, to increase my user counts, I want to have a contest, and that contest is just like the page and then input a form, that's not a very unique action, and that's not something that I'm going to be impressed with when I see that in my newsfeed. A unique action is something that happens very rarely. It's a very special action. So take, for instance, if someone created the game like a Hangman game. Hangman is really a very monotonous game, and every action is very similar. There's a word, you don't know what it is, and you have to say, is there an L in it? No. Is there an R in it? No. Is there J in it? No. That's the same action over and over and over again. Whereas something like draw something, you're actually, every time someone draws something, it's a very unique drawing. Every guess is very unique. And there's unique actions there that later on, when it comes to sharing that story, will be a lot more impactful. Another great criteria when building a social game or a social application is a low barrier to entry. So again, making sure that everything's simple, but really that, you don't even have to have any training, you don't have to have any skills, so you can just cast the blanket out there and get as many users as possible. So low barrier to entry requires that when I hit that application, there's not 10 tutorial screens I have to go through. How often have you gone to a product and the first 15 minutes of that experience is it teaching you how to use the product? That's not a great low barrier to entry product, and what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of drop-off on conversion when people hit that wall. Make it easy, bite-sized actions, and these are things that you consciously consider when you're building your application, and make sure that the barrier to entry is low. Make sure, like Sachin said, build it for your mom or build it for your best friend. Infinite ceiling for creativity. So this is a really neat one, and I think Draw Something and Words with Friends did a really good job. So the barrier to entry is so low. You can be a 5-year-old and play Draw Something because you can essentially, use stick figures if you wanted to. But if you wanted to master the game, you can get more colors, have more detail, and really actually exploding creativity. How does that relate to a social product? Well, think about it like this as far as Spotify is concerned. Infinite ceiling for identity. So Spotify, as you listen to songs, as you create playlists, what it's really doing is it's understanding and it's illustrating or displaying your love for different types of music. So when you go to your profile page and hit music, you can see everything you've listened to, how your music preferences have changed over time, and you have this infinite ceiling for building your identity.